Go trim some flowers.
Hey everyone! Today we're going to learn about the art of the still life. Now, this type of painting has been around for centuries, and I'm sure you've seen a painting of a fruit bowl or two in your lifetime. So, full disclosure, I never fully appreciated the possibilities of this type of painting until recently. And in this intro, I want to share some of the things I've been learning about still life painting, as well as why I think it's such a rich area for growth as an artist. And don't worry, I will actually start painting a still life in a few minutes, but I wanted to show this B-roll of me cutting wildflowers around my yard because it's part of the preparation process, which is just as important as the painting itself. As you probably know, still life painting typically depicts inanimate, everyday objects like food, flowers, or man made trinkets. I used to just take that at face value and I'd think, oh, that's pretty, and move on. Unless I saw some blatant symbolism in the objects that were painted, then I'd think, oh, that's interesting, and move on. But still life painting can tell a much deeper story than that. And it was, I just wasn't paying attention. It wasn't until I started trying to compose a still life myself that I understood how expressive and intimate this art form can be. If you're going to paint an everyday object, the first question you might ask yourself is, an everyday object for whom? A fisherman? A social media influencer? Your mom? Yourself? That answer will drastically change the objects you might choose for the painting. It's kind of like portraiture by extension, a capture not of someone's face, but of the life and times they inhabit. Of course, you don't need to go that in depth if you don't want to. The objects themselves can be a reflection of all kinds of concepts, studies, or stories, ranging from abstract aesthetics to very intimate snapshots of a person's life. So pick one and run with it. Clearly, I've chosen wildflowers. I'm surrounded by them in the summertime and look at them every day to remind myself to stay a little bit wild. I've arranged them in this vase that I got secondhand ages ago. It brings me joy when I look at it, and the glaze reminds me of watercolor. After arranging my wildflowers, I chose to paint them on the floor of my studio because I like the lighting coming through the window, but more on that later. As a quick side note, I wanted to show you the type of paper that I use for the bulk of my videos. It's Artist Loft watercolor paper. It's pretty affordable and readily available at most craft stores. I get mine at Michael's and I use the Artist Level 2, which is a cold press, so it has some texture, and the weight is 140 pounds, so it's heavy enough to take on the amount of water that I use in a lot of my projects. And thank you so much to the viewers who left comments asking questions about the paper. I'm always happy to answer any content related questions, so don't be shy. All right, let's create a still life. So I'm going to paint this piece in layers, starting with the places that will give me structure and focal points, like the vase, the two biggest leaves that frame the bottom of the bouquet, and then the center of each flower. I want this piece to look well balanced and harmonious from the inside out. I'm also planning to make this piece a little more true to life than the more abstract art that I usually make. Not because I have to, but because I kind of want this to be a study in composition, as well as capturing light and shadow. And this is another reason that I think still life offers a lot of value, especially if you want to hone your skills in light, form, and color. You can select objects and arrange them in very specific ways to suit your purposes. You can even control the lighting to help create the aesthetic or mood that you want. It's not always an option in other kinds of paintings, like landscape, for example. I can't, make the sun shine through the clouds in a specific way to create the kind of lighting that I want to learn how to paint. And I can't have a mountain move a little to the left so the composition is more balanced. In still life, you're able to set the stage for yourself and control those variables to not only maybe help you tell a story, but also to help you learn. And I'm going to stop talking for a minute here and let you relax. I'll check in again when we get to the next step. All right, I'm back and I've got the general structure and focal points of this piece painted. So now I'm going to tease out the softer parts of this painting, like the flower petals and the leaves. I'm also going to start working more shadow into the colors at this point. For example, with this daisy, I dotted this deep blue around the center and teased that out to create shadow between the petals. That makes the white pop out from the actual petal. And I did blend the blue in a little bit because the daisy is in a shadow, so I don't want the white to be too bright. I've added some yellow for these wildflowers in the corner and I'm going to let it dry. And while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and add in a little bit more color to this vase. I want it to be a little bit brighter and play around with that natural color variation that it has. For these flowers in the right corner, I've painted them in their true yellow color, but I'm going to darken them with that same deep blue I was using on the daisies for the shadow. And the centers have these really dark rings around them, so I'll concentrate that deep blue color, in the rings around the centers, and then I'll go ahead and blend out the edges to cast a much softer shadow over the petals. And the shadows for these ended up getting a little darker than I anticipated. So I lifted that shadow a little bit and added some more yellow. And this kind of creates a muddy yellow, but that was pretty true to form in the way that the light was hitting them. So it all worked out. All right, and there are two more daisies that I'm painting for this bouquet. So the one I'm painting right now is going to be a little bit lighter than the daisy below it because it's a little bit closer to the light source and isn't blocked as much. And then this topmost one is going to be the brightest because obviously there's nothing in front of it and it is directly encountering the light source. So this is a really great example of how the arrangement and light play can help you learn to master capturing light accurately or the way you want to. And I love still lifes for this type of exercise. They're great. And here I'm just adding in leaf structures. I specifically chose this spot for my painting because I like the way that the light showed through the leaves. They're kind of translucent, which is perfect for creating a subtle background for the flowers. And this is the most soft and loose part of the painting. I didn't want to get too detailed because I didn't want it to distract from my focal points. And here I'm just fine tuning some of the shadow work on the bigger leaves, and I'm also adding some veiny details. I'm going to do a little bit of detail on this face. There's some kind of teal specks throughout it. And the light has moved a lot since I started shooting this video. So this is the only shadow that's left. I don't know if if you go back to that clip I showed you when I was setting down my vase, there was a much larger shadow, but now it's just a little baby one, which to be honest is easier to paint, so I'll take it. I'm also going to paint more shadow on the side here, and that's going to cover up some of my details, but that's okay. That's what shadow does when it gets cast over an object. And I want to paint a little bit of foreground. So I'm going to hint at the concrete floor that this vase is sitting on, just by using some gray and subtle bits of that deep blue purple color I've been using throughout for the shadow. I also want to give a little nod to the sunlight that's streaming through the window. So I'm going to do that by adding some yellow specks and also some gold metallic speckles. And I'm trying to do that in the same way that the sunlight is cast through the window. So kind of in like a diagonal streak there. All right, overall, I like this composition. I just think it needs a little more weight at the bottom, so I'm just going to add kind of an abstract frame here, mostly at the bottom and then very subtly at the top, kind of like a vintage photograph. All right, and if you've watched to the end, thanks so much for joining me and learning about still lifes. I think it's such a fascinating type of painting. And if you paint still lifes, go ahead and leave a comment. I would love to hear about the objects you choose and how you choose to paint them. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want more content like this, hit subscribe. And as always, thanks for creating with me today. Until next time, take care.